everybody, and welcome to another podcast episode of Career Diaries by Elemed, the podcast dedicated to talking about careers in the medtech industry. And we are back on International Podcast Day with an absolutely amazing episode. I'm really humbled and honoured to have on the show today Liam Turley, CEO of Trinzo. Liam, welcome.
Thank you, Elena. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit more about your story and really getting into it. But for those of the people that are listening who don't know who you are, although I'm sure that there's only a few out there who don't know who you are, can you maybe mention a few words, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Liam Turley. I'm the CEO of Trinzo. So we're a medical device consulting company. We help clients with their regulatory quality challenges. So we've been a company for just over 5 years. We're headquarters in Galway, Ireland.
Mm-hmm. Really nice. And so 5 years old.
Yeah, we started in January of 2016. So we did, just 5 years old.
Exciting. And I know that there's some major movements that have happened this year in terms of the company.
Yeah, over the last year, we've grown organically by about 25%, which is fantastic. We've doubled our workforce. And then we also had a recent acquisition where we acquired a company called MedDev Solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So they've joined the team now just over a month ago. And I suppose that acquisition was strategic in nature. What we decided to do is kind of increase our regulatory expertise, but also that training element that we think clients are looking for is now a strength of ours as well.
Really interesting, and let's get into talking a little bit about Trinzo and the future for Trinzo in a bit. But I'm really interested to talk about this topic because when I approached you about the podcast and I sort of said to you, what should we talk about? The one thing that it really seemed to feel personal to you was this idea of resilience and mental toughness.
Yeah, it is. It's something that I've studied a lot and probably had a need for it both in my sporting career and my professional career as well. I suppose my story of resilience really started maybe in February. Actually, I'll tell you the exact date. It was the 16th of February, 2015. A very important day. It's my wedding anniversary, but it was also the first time I was ever made redundant.
Wow.
So so that was kind of traumatic. And, the company I was with, they treated me very respectfully. They look after you very, very well financially. It was as a result of an acquisition itself where one company had bought the other company.
Uh-huh.
So look at that really tested my resilience because, I remember the day very, very clearly. I remember the process. I remember coming home to my family. I suspected this might happen because it often happens with big reorgs. I remember walking into my kitchen and explaining to my wife that I no longer had a job. And for some people, they simply don't recover. I have a couple of colleagues of mine who were also made redundant, and they found it very, very difficult to kind of bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
So really, my resilience was really tested in terms of how my ability to kind of bounce back from that event.
So let's go back even more. So tell us a little bit about sort of where your career started and your journey into medical devices.
Yeah, so my background education, I'm a microbiologist by education, and then I also did an MSc or a master's in biotechnology, and then trained as a QP as well. So all of my background, education-wise, was in science. I always had an interest in science as a kid. I remember blowing things up in test tubes and dissecting frogs and all those sort of fun things. I had a habit of taking things apart at home, not being able to kind of put them back together. So I suppose I always had a kind of a curious mindset. And actually I was lucky to have really good teachers, mentors in the science area. My first job then straight out of college was with a medical company called Hygia. They're based in Galway, and I worked on veterinary medical products, but also animal vaccines. I suppose that gave me an into the industry. I got to work with the IMB at the time, who are now the HPRA.
Okay.
And then I trained as a lead assessor for ISO 13485 as well. And I just had a natural curiosity. And I also really liked reading the regulations and understanding the regulations, something that most people hate. I really enjoyed it, I have to say.
What is it about? So that's really interesting because I spend my whole day speaking to people in regulatory, and it's really interesting to see people become so passionate. And I've been in conferences, you know, where there's been big debates about the medical device regulation, and you know, then you talk to CEOs of companies, and they're sort of like, what do regulatory affairs do again, you know, like, and I just think it's so interesting that you know, that I really see true passion in people about sort of regulatory and what that can do for companies. And I don't see people sort of like talking enough about, you know, regulatory as a career, and actually the value that it adds to a company. For you, sort of looking at it, you know, having worked in this area now basically your whole career, and I know we're going off on a little bit of a tangent, but this is a plug for anybody wanting to go into regulatory affairs. What would you say are the main draws to the industry?
Yeah, look, I think if someone has got a good eye for detail and then are passionate about the products, I think regulatory affairs is a fantastic career choice, or quality. I link them hand in hand. Yeah, but really in this industry, you get to kind of work with novel products, really life-changing products. And what you do is you help clients navigate the pathways to getting these products available for access to patients. And you know, we're privileged to work with some of the best medical device companies in the world with some of the most innovative products. And I suppose for me, there's a personal story behind this as well, because my dad, is a very, very healthy 85-year-old who golfs twice a week. When he was in his early 70s, he couldn't walk. His back had kind of collapsed in the lower part of his back, so he couldn't straighten his back. I remember thinking back that, you know, he looked like my granny, she lived to be in her 90s, but he was bent over, not mobile. He went in and he got 2 brand new knees. They put a plate in his back. And, you know, while you often think of devices like, say, knee implants or plates as kind of non-life changing or life sustaining, they are, because he would have not been able to exercise, he wouldn't have been able to socialize. So there's hidden benefits to some of these products that, you know, really energize and charge me. So when I see new novel products going out there, I just get so excited by it, because I know the impact they can have on patients.
Yeah, and I think it's really, I mean, it's such a privilege to see as well, right? To be in an industry where, or to be in a role where you can directly see the impact or the fruits of your labor, right? And speaking to people, I mean, this is clearly one of the key drivers for you you know, to be in this role. And I see that a lot, you know, talking to people. Everybody's got their own sort of personal story, personal connection to why they do what they do, and it's fascinating to hear that.
Yeah, it is. And it's, you know, that's a special story, because like it's my dad was a builder. He worked with his hands all his life, and to see him, you know, change in terms of the shape of his body, his movements, his interaction with people, and to get the products that just were life changing really for him, it was incredible. Yeah, and then my mom has hearing aids as well, which are life altering as well, because, you know, as we all get older, we're all going to need these products one day. You know, I'm very fortunate to be on the side of understanding how they're designed, how they work, how safe they are, you know, how reliable they are, you know, so it's great to work in this industry. I love it.
A blessing and a curse though, right? Like being able to understand all the details around all of it.
Yeah, and I think, look, it takes a certain way to be wired to get into the regulatory quality space. You know, it does take somebody who's got a good level of attention to detail, you know, and I think, you know, have that curiosity, have that interest, you know what I mean? And I think for individuals that are wired that way, I think it's a fantastic career path, I think.
So going back to your career story, so you were working in the veterinary company. You had the chance to then get trained as an auditor. Did you say auditor?
I did, yeah, as a lead assessor for 1345. I did, yeah.
And then from there, what happened?
Yeah, look at, like, you know, I was in my early 20s, and all I really cared about was sport. So career wasn't really a priority for me at that stage. Until I got an injury, actually. I did my ACL on my right knee, ended up getting that repaired. But, when sports stopped, then I suddenly turned my interest to work. And I was very fortunate to get a role as a technical quality manager with a pharmaceutical company in the south of Ireland. I worked with them for just over 3.5 years. So my career really started with small companies, and that's something that I think was a good career choice for me, because you got to see the breadth of how companies operated. I got to understand not just my own key area, but also wider areas within a business and how it works. And around, roughly around 2000, then I joined Tyco Healthcare, who later became Covidien. So that was my first entry into, say, the large multinationals. I was fortunate to get a promotion. I spent 2 years in the Netherlands and Holland working with a radiopharmaceutical company, a nuclear medical site. They manufacture devices and pharmaceutical products as well. And around that time, then, the drug-coated stent was the rock star of medical devices, I suppose, in the early 2000s. And I was kind of headhunted by Medtronic to come back and lead their drug-coated stent project, mainly because of my background in pharmaceuticals and devices. So at that time, there was very little guidance. You know what I mean? You had to make the guidance up. So I was fortunate that my love of the regulations meant that I was able to kind of figure out, how do you combine CFR 21, Part 820, and 210, 211, which are the drug regs, and what were the relevant sections. So those combo regs have only recently been written and published by FDA, but back then you had to kind of use your intuition, your knowledge to kind of develop, we'd say, a hybrid quality system and regulatory pathway as well. So I spent 3.5 years with Medtronic, and then went back to Covidien, where I took on a global role. I ended up managing sites in France, in the US, in Mexico, and actually spent a year in California in a wonderful place called Newport Beach. It sounds lovely, and it is lovely. So I managed a kind of an integration of a site, actually a ventilation site that we bought over there. And look at that really took me up to the point where Trinzo was formed back in 2016, early 2016.
So obviously sort of worked your way up, got headhunted, got promoted, took on more and more responsibility, started to get really embedded into the organization where you were working, and then boom, out of nowhere, this redundancy came. Yeah,
well, I wouldn't say out of nowhere, because I probably suspected that it was coming, because it often happens, you know what I mean? So I was mentally prepared for it.
Okay.
And I suppose one thing in my career, I think, and I it's advice to anybody in careers, is, I had always built up very strong relationships. And I think that relationship building in careers is really, really important, because it is a small industry. And often what happened to me is, promotions came about through, strong performance, but also the how you do things, and that relationship building is really important as well, I feel.
So when you say the how you do things, what do you mean by that?
So some people are very strong, say, technically, so that's what you do, but the how of what you do, I think is really important as well. Good communication, a collaborative environment. So, I think often technical roles tend to focus more on the what, but what's equally important as you progress is the how you do it as well.
So refreshing to hear you say that, because that was the whole reason why we created Elemed's Mentoring Academy. That was really the big kind of push factor behind. There's so much training out there for professionals in regulatory and quality to get more technical skills and to learn more about standards, regulations, requirements. But actually, what we see very often in recruitment, especially as you start to recruit sort of director level, senior managers to director and director to VP, the thing that really matters are the softer skills. That it's not so much about sort of like the details of what but it's more about how you communicate certain things, how you influence, how you relationship build, how you talk to people outside of your area of expertise, and if you can continue to be understood. And that's actually why we created Element Mentoring Academy, to sort of like help professionals in this area to be able to sort of develop skills outside of the technical skills, but more that sort of like soft communication style. And it's really interesting to hear somebody actually coming from the industry, having had that experience, also reflecting that.
Yeah, I think it is really important, and I think I think it comes as you mature as well, because when we all start off in our careers, I suppose we're keen to kind of progress, get stuff done. But I think as you get older and you see how companies work, that soft skill, that relationship building, becomes even more critical, because you've got to interact with different groups, and particularly with bigger companies. You know what I mean? They often have fairly well delineated organizations. We all kind of work or used to work in these matrix organizations where you need that ability to kind of influence other organizations that aren't under your direct control, and especially in areas of, we'd say, R&D, regulatory quality, where NPIs or new products are coming along. Those handoffs from R&D, say, to quality, to manufacturing, to regulatory are really, really important. And it's both the technical and also the soft skill that's really, really important as well.
Mm-hmm. And you make a really interesting point that I was talking at Raps Convergence yesterday, and this came up. Networking is critical, right? In your career,
Yeah,
is something that you absolutely need to be doing. But also, the worst time to start building a network is when you need a network, right?
I would agree. Yeah. It's like the worst time to look for a job is when you don't have one. Right. The best time is when you have a job. So I think I'd fully agree with that. And I think, like I have a similar philosophy on business. And I think like business to me is all about relationships. And then it's what you do with those relationships, how you exchange energy, your time, etc. But I think business for me, front and forward, is all about relationships. I think it's really important.
100%. And also some of the best business deals and decisions, they don't get made around, in a meeting. They get made outside of the meeting room, right?
They do. There's a famous story, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, where when Covidien was sold to Medtronic, that happened over a dinner.
Yeah,
that was I wouldn't be surprised. 48 billion price tag after it. So it was kind of expensive dinner.
One expensive dinner. So let's go back to that day then.
Yeah.
Your wedding anniversary. Wow. I mean, that was a really tough day, especially.
Tough day. Yeah, it was. And look, I came home, and my wife was extremely supportive. And what she said at the time is, look, it gives you an opportunity now to kind of explore areas that you're passionate about. And so I suppose my first reaction was, okay, I'll retire. So that wasn't very well received or encouraged, but I actually took the time to take 6 months out. So as I said earlier, I'm passionate about sport, and I got involved with the ladies sports team. I ended up coaching them. So I kind of somewhat distracted myself, but I also followed something that I was really passionate about. And I did that for a period of about 3 months. And then I started to develop a little bit of a niche to kind of get something else done. And I suppose the choices were go back into industry or scratch an itch that I've had for a long time, which is to kind of set up my own business. So I did a lot of research around it. And then eventually I was fortunate enough to kind of get a consulting role in Germany with an ex-colleague of mine. So that's, again, based on a previous relationship and a network. So.
And so how valuable was it for you to actually take that time out before jumping into something else?
Yeah, I think it was hugely valuable because, I was probably highly stressed at the time, but didn't really realize it. So it gave me a chance to kind of decompress. And look, it also helped me understand the support structures around me as well, because I think, in terms of resilience, I think one of the key things is I compare resilience to a tree. So it's kind of how deep are the roots, how wide do they spread out? And those roots are really kind of that support structure, whether it's family, whether it's your friends, your network, you know what I mean? How strong a group do you have around you to kind of prop you up when you need to be able to rebound? Yeah.
And so you were looking at different options, you said, right? And you sort of looked at in going back into another full-time role or scratching this itch of maybe starting your own business.
Yeah.
So walk me through that decision-making process.
So it was literally 2 sheets. What's important to me, what's not. Put red ticks in for negatives, green for positives. And I came at it kind of very scientifically first, and then I kind of scrapped that idea and kind of went in and tried to connect with myself emotionally and just see, you know, I really had nothing to lose by attempting to kind of set up my own company, because I always had the choice of going back into industry again. Whereas if I went back into industry straight away, then, you know, you can't really back out of it. You know what I mean? So I said, look, I talked to a number of people. I reached out to my network. One individual was very, very supportive, a guy called Coleman Collins. He runs a recruiting business in Galway called Collins McNicholas. So I talked him through what I was thinking and bounced some ideas off him, and he said to me, "Don't do it." He says, "You're far better off going back into industry." And he actually rang me about 2 weeks later and said, "I regret what I said to you." He said, "I think you've got the drive, you've got youth on your side." He says, "But you're heading for a lot of hard work. You probably think that you're going into something that'll be slow growing and predictable." He said, you're heading in for a roller coaster. And as long as you accept that and understand that, then I think you'll be very successful. So I thought that was a great touch. But again, a network as well. So
talk to me a little bit about sort of expectations versus reality, because this is something that I talk to a lot of people about. When there are a lot of people out there thinking, should I start my own company? You know, should I just become a freelancer? I'm getting contacted every day by recruiters, and so maybe it's a great time to do it. You know, what was your experience?
So my experience was kind of funny and tough at the same time. I suppose my expectation at the start was, people are going to just throw work at me. My phone will not start ringing. I'm going to have ex-colleagues contacting me. I'm going to have such an amount of business through my network, none of which materialized. What did materialize is a lady in the US who'd moved to Germany gave me a small opportunity with a client called Pulsion just outside of Munich. Mm-hmm. That involved me getting up every single Monday morning at 4:00 a.m., driving to Dublin Airport, flying over to Germany, spending my week in Germany, flying back on a Friday evening at 7 p.m. and then coming home at around 10 o'clock at night. I repeated that for, say, 3 months on that contract. So a lot of hard work, dedication. So that was the start of my, say, individual kind of consulting career. So, and then while I was there, that client actually had a lot of other plants in Germany, and they were actually on a consent decree. So I was asked to come in and lead that remediation effort. And it's at that point then that we formed Trinzo. So Trinzo was born in Germany rather than Ireland.
So you spoke about sort of like waking up at 4 a.m., driving to the airport, you know, doing that for 3 months. So yeah. I can imagine, right? There'd be days where that's tough, you know, to get out of bed. Like what was it that was like driving you to keep going?
Yeah, I suppose it comes back to, like, for me, it comes back to kind of, I suppose, my upbringing. My dad was a stonemason or a builder, and I watched him get up every single morning, work really hard with his hands, come home tired. And I think that drive I got from probably both my parents. And I think it's just something that's kind of in you rather than can be taught. Now that's bad news for a lot of people, but I think that innate drive is something that's kind of nurtured from probably a younger age. But really for me, it was kind of all about kind of desire and belief. You know what I mean? I really wanted to kind of prove that I could build a company. I wanted to prove that it could be successful. So I kind of backed myself and kind of energized myself. And then when we took on the larger project, I did that for a further 18 months. So again, it was up at 4 a.m. on a Monday and back late on a Friday for a further 17, 18 months after that as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet your wife took some convincing to agree to that one.
She did, but you know, I was trying to be kind to myself and said maybe I'll go on a Sunday and I'll be able to relax. She said, no, you won't. You'll get up on a Monday and go out. And yeah, because we've a daughter who was probably 8 or 9 at the time. And yeah, so it was trying to get that balance between, say, the family life and the work life as well, and try and get that balance. So at that time, it was completely unbalanced.
Mm-hmm. When you go back to that moment where you're sort of looking at your different options and you're navigating this uncertainty, what advice would you give to anybody that's facing that right now?
Yeah. Well, I think it is all about kind of, for me, it was about priorities. So what are my priorities in life? And, when you work with the multinationals, I was traveling anyway. And I think I would advise people to kind of take a longer look at this than just short term, because often what happens is the start is always really, really tough. You always expect it to be a lot softer than it is, but it can be really, really tough. So what I advise people to do is kind of list out your priorities, what you want out of it. And then if you're comparing decisions, is put them side by side, rank them, score them, and then check in with yourself and see, is this really, really what I want? Is this something that I'm passionate about? Because, what I'd say is, you've heard this many times as well. When you're passionate about doing the work that you do, it's not a job. Mm-hmm. It's something that's a passion. So if it's possible, and we don't all have that opportunity, I would say, follow your passion, you know what I mean? And then, then work becomes a lot easier. So it does.
Mm-hmm. So when did this idea of sort of like resilience become sort of a topic or a theme for you personally? I know that obviously we're talking about a moment in time where you had to be resilient, but the conversation that we've had, you seem to be much more connected to that as a concept.
Yeah, and I suppose it comes back to kind of sport, you know what I mean? I've had, we'd say, a lot of different challenges in terms of sport. I tore my cruciate ligament in my right knee. I had to come back and recover from that, and I went on to win kind of an Irish championship after that. And I suppose even within Trinzo, we went through a period where we were loss making for 6 to 9 months early in our development, and when we set up the company, I think one of the key things that we did was that we picked our values and built the company around those values. And one of those key values is a value we call holding our nerve, which really is all about resilience. And people say to me, like, what is resilience? And it is kind of a fancier word than persistence, but for me, resilience is about that bounce back. So a lot of people, when they get knocked down, stay down. For me, resilience is kind of when you get knocked down, have you that ability to kind of bounce back? Can you, people compare it to kind of falling off a horse to get back on the horse again, so I've just been fascinated by it because some of the key mentors in my life have gone through similar struggles. And I think they've benefited so much in their lives by that having that resilience and that bounce back capability. So.
So let's talk about Trinzo then, because that sounds really exciting. So,
yeah.
You've obviously started this company, you freelance a little bit, and then you've sort of said, I want to build something, and I want to build, which are two really different things, by the way, right? When you're actually,
they are, yeah.
You're actually, so what made you say, actually, I want to build a company, I want to build a consulting company?
Yeah, I suppose it was, we were lucky enough in that at the start, we won a kind of a large project at the very beginning of the forming of the company. And I suppose, like, what I'm really passionate about is developing people. So I love that challenge of taking, say, young teams, whether it's in sport or it's in business, kind of teaching them, mentoring them, and really going out there and seeing as a group, if you put the right frameworks around, if you support a team, if you nurture them, if you bring in great mentors and expertise, how far can you bring a company, or what kind of journey can you go on? So for me, while I enjoy the consulting, I really am passionate about building things. And I think, as you know from your own experience, Elena, that it's the reward you get out of seeing those little wins, the bounce back in the teams. And really what we're passionate about is kind of like we get to kind of work in an environment where we're helping companies serve their patients. So we work with some of the most interesting companies that have really novel devices that are going to make a huge impact on patients' lives. We're lucky that we can kind of go in there, kind of help those clients. You get a financial reward out of it as well, but you also get an emotional reward by going through that journey as well.
It's really interesting, and it's really interesting to hear you talk about this, because I think it's really important to understand the impact of what you do, because that's ultimately the thing. Everybody wants to feel that they have an impact, and being able to make that connection. And even when you're consulting and you're not working for a manufacturer, you know, in-house, you can still directly have that impact. And you also, it's sort of like recruitment, I think, consulting, right? In the sense where like you have this broad tapestry. I feel that I have like a really broad tapestry across the industry because I talk to so many different companies, so many different people. And sometimes when you work for one company, you're almost blinkered. You sort of only see what's going on there. Whereas when you sort of work more consultancy side, you oversee, like you can see the really big picture of all the movers and shakers and what's going on in the industry, which is also really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, look, as we as part of our process, when we look at some of the projects that we work on, we always list actually the device and how it benefits patients. So when we're working with clients, if it could be somebody who's making hips or knees, or it could be very, very unique products, but we will put the patient impact on our check sheets as well, so that as a team we're kind of focused on that sense of purpose as well. It's really important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what's next? So you acquired MedDev. What's going?
Yeah, I think what we're doing at the moment is kind of just integrating that team into, I suppose, into Trinzo. So we're very deliberate about our culture. I think culture is really, really important to us. So, you know, that team is kind of, at the moment, we're kind of integrating them. And what we're doing is we're looking at synergies between both sets of clients, because, you know, one of the attractions in the acquisition was the fact that we shared very few clients. So now we have offerings and solutions that we can provide to the MedDev client base, and equally the MedDev team can provide solutions to our client base as well. Mm-hmm. So probably over the next, say, 2 to 3 to 4 months, we're going to be focused on that integration, make sure that goes really well. And then we're developing what we call centers of excellence. So we are developing key leadership functions in around quality, regulatory, training, and project management. And probably the one that we're going to be most focused on is on the training side as well. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we see, you know, a huge need for talent and developing talent within the industry. You know, you probably see it as well, that it's, you know, the demand is incredible at the moment. You know, and if you can't find talent, my father-in-law used to say to me, buy land. And I'd say to him, why would you buy land? And he said to me, because they stopped making it. So it's kind of, it's a good thing to buy. I think equally with talent in this industry, companies are going to have to find a way to make talent. And we want to be part of that solution where we can provide the training and the mentorship to clients as well. So I think that's a key area that we're going to be focused on.
Really interesting. And sort of more longer term, global domination?
Yeah, look, we'll take it one step at a time, you know what I mean? Like we would, I suppose our vision going forward would be to be that partner of choice for the medtech industry. Now we haven't set any deliberate target around that, but you know that's a 10-year, 20-year journey to get there. But I think, yeah, we want to be that partner of choice. So it's kind of,
yeah, it's good to say that and to have it and to say that bold statement, right? Because that's your BHAG, you know, your
and look at
audacious goal.
It is, and look at we've a great team around us. You know, we've a business coach by the name of Paul O'Kelly that helps us. We've a really good leadership team in the background, a gentleman by the name of Peter Walsh, who's ex global head of ops for Medtronic. So we've a very good support structure. And then we do follow management gurus like Jim Collins. So we're and then you mentioned BHAG. That's Shannon Cisco has a metronome book out. So we're very, very well structured, and topics like your 1HAG, your 3HAG, your BHAG, we're very professional and well organized in that area.
I think that's really important as well when you do have when you decide, okay, you know, like I want to set up a company, you know, rather than sort of like just consult, actually taking time out to actually like focus on the strategy rather than being like, it's very easy to be sucked into the daily operations, and I find that you have to sort of step back and say, okay, like where am I going? What are these goals? What are these key milestones? And actually strategize. And it seems really obvious, but it's actually really hard to do when you're a growing company.
It is, and look at we are very, very structured. So we have a morning meeting every single morning. We're working fully remote with the pandemic. We've moved all our offerings online. When the pandemic came in, we pivoted very quickly. So we have software and technology that allows us to run kind of remote workshops flawlessly. but we're very well organized in terms of, say, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual planning meetings. I think they are very, very important. And I think, yeah, for anybody trying to get in to set up their own company, you know, one of the challenges, and I think this will probably resonate with you as well, Elena, is that it's very, very difficult to work in the business and on the business at the same time. And I think it's something that struck a chord with me is a lot of individuals try and build a company, but they're billing in with clients, or they're using a lot of that time. It then becomes really, really difficult then to kind of manage the growth. So I think it's very important that you take sufficient time out to kind of grow the business, get the strategies defined, and then put in flawless execution in terms of what you need to do. That takes a lot of time and energy. So.
Well, it sounds like you have the grit, the determination, the resilience to be able to get there. So one big sort of final question that I have for you, Liam, is the one that I like to ask everybody at the end of the podcast, which is, what is the legacy that you want to leave on the world?
Yeah, and I suppose, look at the legacy I'd like to leave in the world really would be around the fact that I'm a people developer. So, you know, I would like, you know, to be known for, if people interacted with me, that they have a positive thought, but in somehow I've kind of helped enhance their lives. So I think we do that really well in the business. And I think in my sporting career, I manage a lot of, you know, youth teams, bigger teams. So I'd like to be known as someone that kind of helps develop people and really helps them reach their full potential. That could be in business or in sport. So that's kind of what I'm really passionate about.
And that passion definitely shines through, Liam. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure to hear.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and thank you for taking the time. Where
can people find you?
Yeah, look at Trinzo.com, or if they come to the rainy west of Ireland, we're located in Galway City. Galway's a fantastic city, a real hub of medical device companies as well. So you've got the likes of Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Merck Medical. All the big medical device players are here, and that's where we get a lot of our talent from there as well. So, but you can also follow us on LinkedIn. We're always looking for more followers as well.
So thank you, Liam, once again. And to all of you listening to this episode, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, write your comments below, get in touch with me, get in touch with Liam if you have any further questions. And I will see you soon on another episode on Career Diaries by Elemed. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena.